So, finally we're all here. My name is Christian Beer. I'm the German PR manager and Eastern Europe PR manager at Blizzard Entertainment. And we'd like to welcome you here to our press presentation. We will do 3 parts of the press presentation. First off, we start off with Diablo 3. Then we have a presentation on StarCraft 2. And in the end, for World of Warcraft, Cataclysm. After that, we have a Q&A session, roughly about 20 to 30 minutes. So let me introduce first off Jay Wilson, the game director of Diablo 3, and Justin Scarra, lead designer of Diablo 3. Please enjoy.
All right, hi everyone. As Christian said, my name is Jay Wilson. I'm game director on Diablo 3. This is Josh Mascara, who's a lead designer on the console for Diablo 3. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about our in-game for Diablo 3 and some of the features and just general design philosophy that we have towards those systems. So in Diablo 2 and the original Diablo, a lot of the focus for the in-game was extending the past normal difficulty with new difficulty settings. So you'd finish normal difficulty and then you'd move on to, go ahead, going forward. So the normal difficulty was basically the core kind of gameplay experience. It was basically what you call the single player game, although they were always co-op enabled. And once you finish normal difficulty, you unlock the next difficulty, which was Nightmare. So, and that provided, greater challenges, and new monsters, and new items, and things like, well, not new monsters, but more challenging monsters, and new items, and things like that. And then after Nightmare, you unlocked Hell. So Hell was even further, more dangerous, as you can see. There's a ton of monsters chasing you. It's scary. And, made the game even more challenging, but the quality of the items got better, and you got to level up even further. And we're keeping all these kind of similar conventions for Diablo 3. You're going to have the same kind of level from normal to Nightmare to Hell, but one of the things that we've done is add a new difficulty setting, which is Inferno. So the basic idea is that in Diablo 2, the focus of the difficulty progression was you kind of leveled up through each difficulty, and by the end, you really out-leveled a lot of kind of normal the Hell difficulty stuff. And we wanted to create another one, the difficulty setting, that was basically maximum level. You get to max level, and this entire difficulty setting is basically customized for you. So, as I mentioned, this is kind of a max level difficulty. So, the player's maximum level in Diablo 3 is level 60, so the basic monsters that you face in Inferno are all at least level 61. So essentially what this allows us to do is it takes the entire game and kind of flattens it. It says all the content is available at the maximum level and makes the whole game kind of challenging and creates an even greater challenge than players have experienced in the previous games. And the nice thing is that that once you come into this kind of level, you're never basically going to out-level it, since the player's level can never exceed the level of the even most mundane monsters in this difficulty. It's always going to be a viable place to go and find a challenge or how much power your character gets. All right, and the nice thing about Inferno is that because it's higher difficulty, it has new sets of items that drop specifically in those areas. We've done a lot of cool kind of item stuff with each of the difficulties, but before we get to that, I'll talk about monster progression. So with each difficulty, we change several things. And the first one is we change how monsters interact with you. So the monsters become harder. And what does that mean? Well, we raise their level, and by raising their level, that essentially changes all kinds of attributes on those monsters. So for example, if a monster is fire resistant, they're more fire resistant at a higher level. Their health increases, their damage increases, their speed, movement speed increases. And in general, they become more aggressive. So we have several attributes that kind of control how often monsters attack and how quickly they will pursue you. And all of those things kind of universally decrease as you go into the higher difficulties. And then the last thing we do is we have a lot of monsters that are kind of randomly generated bosses and several powers that can appear on them. And as you go into the higher difficulties, the number of powers that appear on them increases, and we also have some powers that are unique to the higher difficulty levels. All right, so the next thing we do is focus a lot on items. Now in Diablo 2, when you got to the higher difficulty, you got better items, but they actually used the same art that you saw in normal difficulty. So one of the things we've done in Diablo 3 is that every difficulty essentially has its own items. So here we see the first one's a shot of kind of a mid-normal difficulty wizard. The second shot is nightmare difficulty. And the last one is, I think that one's a late hell difficulty. So, and this is true for all the classes. Every class kind of gets unique armor looks and unique items as they level up through the entire game. So that's definitely a max level demon hunter. So this is the monk. That's our normal difficulty. Early nightmare and inferno. So as you can see, the visual progression really extends far beyond just kind of the normal playthrough. It gives players something, a reason to continue to level up past normal difficulty. So one of the other things we also focus on is the artisans. So we announced artisans last year, which is essentially crafting. And you can have a variety of different artisans, and each one does some kind of crafting or item enhancement. They have kind of a cart area that you see, you visit them, and as you continue to progress through the game, you'll level those things up. And there are several kind of visual levels of the artisans that are only available in the higher difficulties. So here we have kind of examples of the blacksmith. This one is the, I think that one's the jeweler. Yeah, it's the jeweler. And then the last one is the mystic. So these are some examples of also some in-game items. We have a suit of armor, the one with the orange lettering. That's a unique item, which means it's been handcrafted by the design team. So the attributes on it are always the same attributes, but the ranges of them can still randomize to have a lower or better quality. And then the other one is a rare item. So rare items are completely randomly generated. And the way we've kind of tuned the game is that rare items are the best items in the game, but the hardest to get, because getting a really perfectly rolled rare item is a lot harder than getting, say, a unique item that has got good stats on it, because we can't do unique items. So the next thing we talk about is runes. So one of the things that we focused on to extend past normal difficulty as the primary way that you enhance your skills is runes. So the first kind of 2 level of runes are available in normal difficulty, and they let you do a lot of kind of customizing of your skills. But as you get higher into higher difficulties, you unlock higher ranks. And each higher rank essentially powers up what that rune does for you. If the rune, say, takes your magic missile spell and splits it into 2 projectiles at rank 1, it splits it into 8 projectiles at rank 7. So, and we've also got gems as a major element of in-game progression. Now, gems are not actually difficulty restricted, but we only drop, say, about the first 5 tiers of gems as item drops, and you have to combine them to get to the higher tiers. So it actually takes an enormous amount of gems to get to kind of the highest quality gems in the game. So we don't really expect people to be doing that until you're well into the end game and continuing to essentially evolve their gems for a long time after they've reached max level. So this shot is just kind of an example of the difference between a level 1 character with no items and a level 60 character. So you see we start with 10 attack and 9 precision, and we end up with numbers in the high hundreds. This is also a really good shot to kind of show how vastly the numbers can differ depending on how you customize your character. So in this case, there's over 700 vitality, but under 300 precision. So this is somebody who's focused very heavily on a very defensive build and not a lot on crit, say a crit focus. So every character can really be built very differently from one another. So to kind of compare and contrast Diablo 2 in-game from Diablo 3. Diablo 2, the item rewards, as I mentioned, were recycled, so the visuals didn't improve. The hero's max level was 99, which was a lot higher, but the problem is that there wasn't enough content to actually cater to that number of levels, because the highest level monster was 85. So you just leveled right past the content, and essentially items and skill points and everything that you got became fairly meaningless. There was a lot of repetitive runs. There was a very small amount of content that was actually viable in the best of situations. And there wasn't really any room to grow the systems. And the development team really didn't design the systems to be grown past kind of core release. So one of the things we focused on with Diablo 3 is solving and improving a lot of these issues. So item rewards are unique per difficulty. So as you mentioned, they have unique visual elements. We capped the level player at 60, so that we had some room to grow. And we might extend levels, but even if we don't, what that provides us is the ability to provide content that is equivalent to the amount of levels that the player actually has. So as I mentioned, max level for monsters is level 61, so there's always a challenge. No matter how much power you gain, there's always a fight to be had that's worth having. So there's also, Inferno makes essentially the entire game viable for in-game content. So the need to do repetitive kind of runs in the same area is a lot lower because there's a whole bunch of content that you can visit. And that's one of the things in the future that we're going to continue to look at, is if we still see people targeting specific areas for efficiency's sake, then we will likely go in and add systems that reward the player for playing a broad diversity of content, which just keeps the game interesting for longer. And we've really designed all these systems to allow us to have kind of room to grow and continue to extend the game for years after release. And the last thing I wanted to mention is we have this cool 3D art that we got done for us. That's the address, I assume. So if you want to go take a look at it, it's really neat. And there you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Jay. We will now have the presentation for StarCraft 2 with Johnny Ebert, the senior game designer of StarCraft 2, Heart of the Swarm. Please welcome Johnny Ebert.
Today I want to talk to you about Heart of the Swarm. Heart of the Swarm is basically it continues the epic saga of Wings of Liberty, and you're going to be playing as Kerrigan. And those of you that played Liberty will know that Kerrigan was restored to mostly human form at the end of Liberty. And when you find her in Heart of the Swarm, she's on a mission to kill Arcturus Mengsk, a man she feels is responsible for most of her pain and suffering in her life. And to do this, since he's guarded by the vast majority of the Terran army and fleet, she feels like she needs to get the swarm back together to be able to break through Korhal's defenses and actually get a face-to-face confrontation with Mengsk. And the state of the swarm right at this point is that it's broken up into mostly ferals that are just mindless animals, and then there are pockets that are controlled by individual queens that are still sentient. And Kerrigan's going around and challenging these queens to either surrender their part of the group to her or she'll destroy them. And what we're kind of going for is we're going for a fantasy that you're playing Kerrigan, and you start off, she's in her human form, she's greatly diminished, but over the course of the campaign, you're gonna scale. She's gonna scale up dramatically, and that you're going to be able to tap into the core fantasy of the Zerg, which I'll go into. So we'll start off with Kerrigan. Kerrigan will be like a playable character in pretty much every mission. And where we kind of started with that was, in Liberty, Kerrigan would show up occasionally in missions, and she would just basically just wreck your army, massacre your troops, wipe out half your base in one swath, and then you kind of like concentrate everything on her and finally get her to kill, and she'd slowly respond. So we thought it would be really exciting if the players could do that to their enemies for a change rather than having it done to them. So Kerrigan will start off, and she'll be pretty powerful, but over the course of the campaign, you're going to notice her power is going to scale pretty dramatically. And she'll be unlocking new abilities. And if you see in the screenshot behind me, in a very tiny format, is she has multiple sets of power she can choose from. We call these battle focuses. And the battle focus mechanic is kind of unique in the sense of, well, first to explain what it is. Each set of powers kind of is kitted to a particular theme. So you have a spec ops, which is mainly kind of like the nuker spec. She can like stun large groups of units, or she can destroy them like with a big nuke. Or you have the corruption focus, which is a little more sinister, a little more zergy, but that weakens the large parts of an army and sets them up to be destroyed. For example, she can throw a corrosive goo on a large swath of units, and they take additional damage from any unit that hits them. So then you can send your zerglings in and just kind of eat them alive. And so these focuses will be unlocking over the course of the campaign, and you'll notice there's slots in there that haven't been unlocked yet. And then every mission or so you'll be unlocking a new slot for a new focus. And the focuses, unlike your army upgrades, they're not permanent. You can play one mission as the spec ops focus, and then you can play another mission as the corruption focus. You can kind of flip back and forth depending on your mood or how you want to play the mission, or what you think best fits the objectives you're trying to accomplish. Let's move on to the next slide. The other part of the fantasy for the Zerg was adapting the swarm. We feel that the Zerg are always adapting to their opponents and changing their shape and the powers they have. And we thought it would be cool if we could put you in charge of that. So, like I said, Kerrigan's trying to get the swarm back together, and she's going to individual planets and adding the units back to her fold. And as you do that, as you can see in the screenshot behind me, on the left you'll have like 3 upgrades you can buy. One like increases the speed your zerglings move at, another one increases the speed at which they attack. And then on the far right, there's like a super upgrade that we call mutation. And what a mutation means is you get to choose between one of 2 subspecies, a brand new unit. So the 2 choices you'll have is, you'll have the Raptor, which is a zergling variant that can leap over enemies or obstacles to quickly close with their target. Or you'll have the Swarmling, which is a type of zergling that bursts in groups of 3 rather than 2, but it's at the same price, so you can really get quickly get numbers together to overwhelm your opponents. So just to summarize, the Heart of the Swarm campaign is going to be approximately 20 missions in length. And one of the things that we're kind of maintaining from Liberty, from all of our RTS missions really, is we're really focusing on the quality of those missions and how unique they are. Every mission has its own unique hook. Every mission has its own unique mechanic to kind of distinguish it from the other missions. And other things you'll be experiencing with expansion or new multiplayer units and maps. We'll also have the Blizzard Dota mod that we're going to be releasing near the launch of the Heart of the Swarm. And some cool, exciting BattleNet upgrades to BattleNet, particularly with the custom game search function. And we'll be talking about multiplayer in detail and Dota at the upcoming BlizzCon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Johnny. And now we're up for World of Warcraft. Please welcome Tom Chilton, Game Director of World of Warcraft Cataclysm, and Chris Robinson, Art Director, World of Warcraft Cataclysm.
Hello, everyone. So what we're going to be talking about today is our patch 4.3. As some or many of you may know, we are in the midst of playing the patch 4.2, Raids of Firelands. And we have quite a few new things to announce for 4.3. And I'd like to summarize some of the content and features, and I'll get into some of those features in a little bit more detail. So to start with, we have the content that we can expect to have in 4.3. And that starts, of course, with the Deathwing raid. We're going to have an entirely new raid tier that will culminate with the Deathwing encounter. And that's really meaningful to players, of course, because Deathwing is the ultimate nemesis, the big enemy, of course, for the Cataclysm expansion. And I think think as players would imagine, since it's probably, you can say that Deathwing's probably the most epic enemy we've ever seen to date, that we're going to have the most epic encounter we've ever seen to date. We'll be talking a lot more about that content in detail on the website in coming months, but as a quick teaser, I think that a lot of you can imagine the idea of flying through the sky, fighting on Deathwing's back as part of the fight to bring him down and take him on in other phases. So there's a large number of different phases that are all part of the Deathwing fight, and in general, it's going to be super epic. To go along with that, to complement it, we have 3 new instances for 5-person instances, dungeons, and players will be able to go through those instances, and they all build up toward the raid encounter. In addition, we have the addition of the new Dark Moon Fair Island. We've completely redone the Dark Moon Fair event from scratch, so that players can go to an island that's kind of this creepy, spooky vibe to do all their Dark Moon Fair activities, including a whole bunch of different new activities. I think Chris Robinson mentioned in some of the interviews earlier today that we have one of those activities is Whack a Knoll. So anybody familiar with some of those types of games should get some entertainment out of that. And then of course we have the 3 primary new game systems that we're going to be talking about tonight. And that covers the transmogrification feature, the void storage, and then also the raid finder. So really more than anything else, what we're doing today is talking more in depth about those specific features. So the first one is the transmogrification. And what this is it's our way to address a problem that's been sort of growing in World of Warcraft for many years now. And the crux of that problem is that players want more ability to customize the look of their character. Over the years, as we've made the raid content more and more accessible, and a larger number of the players, the player base in general, have been able to get into raiding and get really awesome looking epic gear, it has led to this situation where a lot of players that are experiencing the end game end up looking exactly the same as other characters of the same character class that are also experiencing the end game. So, let's pretend that I'm a warlock or something like that, and Chris is a warlock, and we're both doing raiding, and even though he's doing the heroic mode and I'm doing normal mode or whatever, we end up looking very similar to each other. And we've really got a lot of feedback from players that they'd like to have more control over how their character looks. So, conveniently, the Ethereals have come up with a new technology that they're going to bring and offer their services. So what you can do is you can take the art of one item, so you can take one item that you really like the look of, and then combine it with another item that you like the stats of, and combine them into one item where you have the art and look of the one and the stats of the other. What this allows is for players to go back to older content if they choose, or take any items that they've already earned from the past that they've been saving for years and years, and apply that to the new tier of items that they're getting. What we imagine is that a lot of players will go through the new content and get a lot of the new armor sets and probably enjoy the new armor art and the new looks of the new set for quite some time. But after a while, as more and more people start to get that stuff, they're going to want to differentiate themselves a little bit. And so we definitely imagine that there will be people out there, let's say there's the warrior who ends up wanting his stuff to look like the Might set from Molten Core. And maybe this guy already has the Might set from way back in the day, or maybe he goes through Molten Core and solos it like he can today, and farms up all the Might set and then converts his current Deathwing armor to look like the Might set. So at the end of the day, really what that means is a lot more ability for players to customize how their characters look and feel a little bit more individual. Here's a little screenshot of some of those old armor sets that we think players will find very popular to make themselves look like once again. Now finally, to go along with that, these clever ethereals have also come up with another service called void storage. Because as they bring transmogrification to the world, they've also come to the conclusion that players are going to want to store a lot more items than they used to be able to store. And that's not something that our bank can currently support. So those clever ethereals, being smart like they are, they've introduced a new service called void storage, where they will, for a fee of course, hold on to some of your items for longer periods of time. So that's what you can do when you go and get all these, collect all these different sets of armor, or perhaps, a lot of players out there have already collected a lot of different sets of armor and would like to finally get them out of their bank so they can use their bank a little bit more effectively. They're able to use this void storage service to hold on that stuff. So essentially, in a lot of ways, like a second bank. And finally, the third feature that we're going to be talking about tonight is the Raid Finder. Many of you may be familiar with the Dungeon Finder feature that we already have. The Dungeon Finder feature, of course, allows players to be match-made with other players to do content, the dungeon content. So one of the things that we've heard over and over now is that players would like for that to extend to the raid, right? Currently, it can definitely be a hassle to get a raid going. Even when, let's say, you have a guild and let's say you have 6 people or 7 people on for the night, sometimes it can be a real pain to find those last couple of people to be able to do a raid. And so what we want is for people to be able to join this Raid Finder queue and get matched up with appropriate groups that are looking for the types of roles that they're in need of. The screenshot kind of shows an example of what that would look like. It should look very familiar to anybody that has used our Dungeon Finder tool. And now it will extend to the raid concept. This feature builds raids for raids of up to 25 players. So as you can see here in this particular example, it's looking for 2 total tanks for the raid. It's going to look for 8 healers and 15 DPSers. And it, as much as possible, we'll try to intelligently put them together so that there's as much class variety as possible. And in general, try to make sure that the group is a very sound group and capable of meeting the content. So I think that that's going to be something that in a lot of ways opens up the raid content to people that aren't currently able to experience it. And just as importantly, I think that it will make the raid content a lot less of a hassle, even for people that do it today, as they're maybe short by a couple of people or even not able to raid on the same nights that their guild raids, stuff like that. So that really summarizes our key features and content for 4.3. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So we're now taking questions, but first I will ask the first question to Jay. Could you please tell us when will the beta for Diablo 3 start?
When it's ready, but that should be pretty soon.
No, seriously.
It should be pretty soon. We are targeting for Q3, which I think everybody knows ends at, I believe, end of September.
End of September, I think that's...
End of September is by, we'd like to have it by then. And it all depends upon when it's ready, but we think it'll be ready before then.
Okay, and when would you like to be ready for the Diablo 3 release then?
When it's done. Yeah.
Okay, so we are now
real soon.
Yeah, sooner than later. Okay, rather. We are now open for questions from the audience. You can ask whenever you want, except for any release date, please.
Hi, Tadeusz Zieliński from Hyper TV. I have a question about the real money auction house in Diablo 3. Will the items from the new difficulty levels will be available as in the auction house as well, or will there be any item that will be only obtainable by playing the game? Because basically the most important feature for hardcore games is getting the gear that no one else can. And basically when you can buy everything, the whole idea of being the uber nerd with super gear kind of disappears. So will there be any items that are unobtainable by buying them?
No, there'll be no items that you equip on you that are not obtainable through the auction house. I think the thing that some of our more hardcore players should remember is that you could buy every single item in Diablo 2, and people did in large abundance. They either did it through trading, trading Stones of Jordan, or bartering other objects, or they did it through real money by going to other websites. So the notion that in Diablo you could never buy items or trade items to get what you wanted not only is false, but it's actually contrary to what the game was designed for. It was designed to be a game where you traded to get the best things.
Thank you.
I have a question for Tom about the item chain. is there going to be a restriction on item quality and item stats when you apply it to a new item? So can you use low-level green graphics and maybe plague intellect graphics on a plague strength item?
There are restrictions in that in order to, for example, if you have a piece of plate mail and you want to make it look like another item, it also has to be plate mail. So there's a plate mail to plate mail, mail to mail, leather to leather, cloth to cloth requirement. And also it still respects any class restrictions. So if an item is, let's say it's Death Knight class specific, you wouldn't be able to apply that to a piece of armor for your warrior. And then finally, we also don't allow you to transmogrify things to look like a legendary item. Legendary items are always unique with their art.
Jay, you said that Josh is the lead designer for Diablo 3 on consoles. So it's basically confirmed that we'll get Diablo 3 on PlayStation 3 or Xbox or... Hi Josh.
Hello. So right now we're not making any real announcements about Diablo on console. The only thing I can say is that Blizzard is very, very serious about bringing the Diablo 3 experience to the console. To that end, we're trying to build the best console team at Blizzard. So we're looking for programmers, designers, artists who think their dream job would be to bring Diablo to the console, and trust me, it is a dream job. So that's what we're saying right now. All I can say is it's going to be awesome. Stay tuned.
That's why it's here.
Any more questions? We also have Frank Pierce, one of the founders of Blizzard, on stage, and as you can see, we celebrate the 20th anniversary. So if you have any questions regarding the past of Blizzard, you're welcome to ask.
Yeah, it's me again. Hi. So I want to know, you said you will release Blizzard Dota close to Heart of the Swarm. Will you release it as a free custom map or via the marketplace?
We'll be talking a lot about Blizzard Dota at the upcoming BlizzCon, but I can't comment on that until then. Outside of the fact that it's awesome. But
Any more questions? Yes, over there. Polish friends.
I have a question for Tom Chilton regarding the raid finder. Are you planning to restrict the raid finder to the server, or it's going to go battle group wide? Because when it's on the server, it might actually help to form new guilds and let the players socialize more.
I think that for Raid Finder, it's definitely going to be cross-server. The most important thing for Raid Finder is that it's a good experience using Raid Finder. We already have the looking for guild tool that should hopefully be helping players find guild memberships that work for them. But for Raid Finder, it's going to be very important that the waits not get really long, right? You're talking about creating a 25-person raid, and we want to be able to do that quickly and efficiently. And to be able to do it quickly and efficiently, it kind of implies that we have to expand it to cross-server.
So Jay, at the press event, you talked about that you think you could rework the rune system to drop runes unassigned to skills and then let them get a skill when you put them into a skill.
Yes, I did talk about that.
So, any comments on that? How's it going?
We haven't done it yet. It's actually something I think is getting implemented right now. And once we implement it, we'll make a determination whether it's actually fun or not. So, mostly kind of talked about that as a, hey, here's something that we're thinking about doing. So, but we haven't really tested it, so we don't, it's an experiment at this point.
So another question over there, and we have one over here.
Tom? Yes, I have a question about the whole StarCraft universe. I mean, the StarCraft mod, which is the kind of StarCraft MMO, is kind of a success. I mean, it's kind of popular. And there was a game called StarCraft Go, which we cancelled, and I don't like it because of that. Sorry, I really want to see that. But my question is now, when are you at least looking at the chance of just transferring the world of StarCraft into any other game. Just like an example of StarCraft Ghost, or trying to respawn it, or doing anything like that. Or maybe StarCraft MMO even. I mean, you could just announce it now if you want. No problem.
So we definitely feel like all the worlds that we create would lend themselves well to multiple genres and multiple forms of media. So if there was a development team that was within Blizzard that was free and available to create StarCraft MMO, and that was something they were really passionate about, then we would certainly consider it. But right now, as you can see, based on the presentations these guys did tonight, that we've got our hands full with everything that we're doing, so we don't really have any plans to do anything beyond the StarCraft RTSs and the expansions right now. But anything's possible because we have created such rich and cool universes.
Yeah, so my question is regarding StarCraft 2 and the new ways of battle.net. Will you have some upgrade about eSport featuring, like the possibility of making Pinam and I don't know, shootcast, some new shootcast featuring?
Yeah, this is what we'll be talking about at BlizzCon. We do have a lot of really cool multiplayer features and Battle.net features, but don't want to give out any spoilers right now. Sorry.
Over there was a question. So, that is.
I'll ask one more question, but this time it's for Frank Pierce. You achieved a lot. That's not much to say. You achieved a huge amount of things as Blizzard. Is there something that you failed at? Is there something that you wanted to do but you didn't accomplish it?
I think we make mistakes and fail day in and day out. I think that's part of the process that we have for making games. If for me, the one thing that stands out in recent memory is Marketplace. I know we talked about StarCraft Marketplace, I think 3 years ago at BlizzCon at this point. And for me, I really feel like one of the things we've learned with World of Warcraft over the last 7 years is that the players experience the content at a pace much faster than we can create it. Right, Tom? And so it's very difficult for us to keep up with the rate at which the players want to experience the content we can create. And so from our perspective, I think one of the things that would be really powerful is if there was a mechanism by which really awesome user-generated content could be put in the hands of the fans and created by the fans. And from my perspective, I think the StarCraft 2 Marketplace was an opportunity for us to do that. And ideally, if we'd had the resources and the time and the mechanism, it would have been awesome if we could have launched that with Wings of Liberty. So I feel like that was a mistake on our part. And honestly, I'm not even sure what the timing is going to be for Marketplace as it relates to Heart of the Swarm. I think it would be ideal to have as many features as possible for Marketplace available with Heart of the Swarm. But it's much more important for us to get that Heart of the Swarm content into the fans' hands than to hold it up for Marketplace. But some of the Marketplace features revolve around making sure that custom maps are easily browsed and easily downloaded and distributed. So you'll see definitely some components of it, but maybe not to the extent that I would like. That's probably one big mistake. Another big mistake we made was underestimating the demand that we would see for World of Warcraft when we launched it in November of 2004. There was a point at which we actually stopped shipping boxes of World of Warcraft to retail outlets because we did not have the hardware infrastructure to support the demand. So, those are just a couple examples, but you could probably ask each one of these guys up here for examples, and they'd probably be able to give you 2 other examples.
Okay, thank you. We have, I see you. We will over there, and now you are up with the next question. Please.
Okay, thank you. Railton from Denmark. This is a question mostly for Frankie, I guess. Listen, you guys have made some of the best games ever made, and with good reason. Blizzard is always one of the most talked about companies at every gaming convention ever. But I think the very best Blizzard title of all time is often neglected, and that's obviously Blackthorn from the 90s. You guys remember that? I love that game back in the 90s.
I worked on that, I remember.
You did? You did? Awesome. When are we finally going to get Blackthorn 2? I mean, you've done a sequel to every other title. When's that going to come?
All you have to do is convince one of the development teams that that's what they should work on next after they finish the project they're on, and you're golden.
Awesome. Thanks.
But I mean, all our franchises are near and dear to our heart, but some of them, might just be pieces of our history and might not be something that we're able to leverage for the future.
Okay, we have a question here in row 3 or 4. Yes, that's you.
Question for Tom. You said before, like Frank said just now, that content you create for WoW is consumed at a much faster rate if you can create it. I think it's a bit of an inappropriate thing to say. Do you think randomization is a solution to that? Can you ever see WoW go that way?
Randomization is a very tricky thing because a lot of times what you can end up with is 99% really crappy random content, and then 1% of it was like, oh, that was really cool. And so it's always very difficult to find ways to box in the randomization to actually get you a reliably great player experience. And that's not to say that that's never been done before, but in a game that is as large and complex as World of Warcraft and the environments are as complex as they are and all that kind of stuff, that can be very difficult to do. That being said, in one of the 5-person instances in patch 4.3, you get a random boss. So the bosses aren't always the exact same aren't always the exact same every time you go through it. So that's one form of randomization that we try to use to vary up the experience a little bit. But to get to the point where World of Warcraft has highly randomized content as a method to deliver content more quickly or with more longevity than we do right now, it's probably very difficult for us to do.
Thank you. Question here in the last row, please.
Hello, I think it's mostly a question for Frank Pierce. And Warcraft 3, I think, was the biggest step for any Blizzard game. From 2 to 3, it invented so much new stuff, role-playing system for heroes, Battle.net grown to a certain point of really being as big as it is now. Do you think over the years of growing Blizzard, getting bigger and bigger and much bigger and bigger fan base, StarCraft 2 and Diablo 3 feel a little bit conservative to me? Do you think personally that because of this growth that you now are not able to do as risky projects anymore, as an example Warcraft 3?
Jay, how do you feel about that?
I don't think we're restricted at all by growth to doing things that are risky. I mean, we're doing real money auction house in Diablo 3, and that seems pretty risky, at least that's what the internet tells us. I would say that, I've talked to, Rob Roberto a lot about Warcraft 3, and I don't want to speak for that team, but, one of the goals there was that they knew someday that they were going to make a StarCraft 2, and they wanted to distinguish the two, the Warcraft and StarCraft RTSs from one another so that they played very differently. So they had a very good reason for shifting to a completely different style of game for that title. For Diablo 3, we really felt that there hadn't been a Diablo 3. There was still things to say in that kind of core gameplay style. If there had been, dozens or hundreds of action RPGs with isometric view and combat that had come out after Diablo 2 and kind of exhausted the genre, well, maybe we'd feel differently, but they didn't exist and they didn't show up. So, we really felt like there was a lot more to say within the genre in making a true sequel to Diablo 2.
Thank you. Any more questions?
This one is also about World of Warcraft. So with being able to change how your set looks, don't you think it might be confusing for some players? Because right now, if I see someone in certain type of gear in Battleground, I know whether it will be easy kill or not so much. And as you mentioned, you will be... You also...
Obviously, you're looking for the challenging, difficult kill, right?
Not at all. I'm just spawning noobs and greens. And you also mentioned that you want to be able to change the looks for the legendary. Does it mean that the weapons also would be available to be switched in their appearance?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part about the legendary.
Yeah, you said that you want to be able to change the looks for the legendary item. So does it mean you can change the look of the weapon at all?
It's more the other direction, where you can't make something that isn't legendary look like legendary. So that if you see something that looks like legendary, you know it actually is, just to protect the mystique of legendary items. But as it relates to the PvP question that you brought up, there definitely will be less of an immediate knowledge of exactly what tier of gear is person X in. I think that what's important for us to do is to continue to refine the gameplay experience so that you don't have those huge disparities in matchups as much that really kind of hinge on that. I think in some ways the arena matchmaking system has been successful in that regard. When we switched over to the Gaussian distribution filter about a year and a half ago or so, in that you much more reliably get matchups that are appropriate for you, sort of regardless of gear. I know that when I play in the arena, for example, I don't pay that much attention to what gear they're in anymore, whereas I used to. That used to be a huge deal. In a battleground, I think it's interesting because there's a little bit more merit to the argument, but at the same time, there's a little bit less in that, that could be somebody that's actually in really good gear that you didn't realize was in really good gear. To me, that doesn't bother me that much. And you'll have the flip side too, where sometimes somebody will look like they're in something that is more epic than what they actually have. But at the end of the day, I think what really matters is that the core gameplay experience of fighting somebody, you're going to kind of quickly realize that, this person really is taking a whole lot of damage. Wow, they must not have a lot of resilience, or they're really laying waste to me. I guess they have good gear. At the end of the day, I don't think that your average player really makes those mental calculations before they get into a fight.
Thank you.
Thank you. There was a question.
Hi. You guys earlier this month filed a trademark for Mists of Pandaria. Is that part of the new expansion or something else?
When will it be released?
On internet rumors and speculation. That can't apply to anything. We have a lot of products going on, things like comic books. We've got all kinds of stuff. So we definitely are working on an expansion, but we're not talking about the details of it yet.
So it has been a long day. The first day of GamesCom. We'll have time for 3 more awesome questions, and we have one right here.
Hi, so the new Battle.net looks like you could basically play every game on it. Did you ever think about opening the Battle.net to other companies, like Activision hosting Call of Duty on Battle.net?
So I think that's a really great idea for Battle.net to be a platform that we can make available to other parties. We don't have any specific plans for that right now. Our focus is to make sure that Battle.net is supporting the games that we've got in development at Blizzard. Once we have that well in hand, then we can maybe take a strategic look at what we can do beyond that. But the Battle.net team is honestly exceptionally busy right now supporting the game teams that we've got. I know that the StarCraft 2 team, as an example, has all kinds of things that they'd like to achieve with the support of Battle.net, and Battle.net's primary focus right now is Diablo 3, because our goal is to get Diablo 3 out as quickly as possible. So, really cool idea, definitely something we'd like to be able to consider in the future, but we have our hands full with everything that we're doing right now.
I have a question for Jay, talking about the Diablo 3 auction house. What about smartphone support? Can you imagine something like that? I don't know, I have the auction house available at my smartphone, I can see, there's cool items available, and going home and, picking it up.
I can definitely imagine something like that. But at release, we won't be supporting anything on mobile with it. But if there's a demand for it, it's definitely something we'll look into.
Tom, a specific question about the armor changing. Were you allowed to change the look of a bind on equip armor piece so it's more that people will want to buy the item off the auction house because it looks better, so the price is higher than, or will it bind to the character?
That's still to be determined. I think that part of the problem with what you're describing, while it's a cool idea, is it would be very hard for somebody to know that it was an item that had its look changed. And you know, it may be something subtle in there that says that it's been transmogrified, but there wouldn't be any. We don't, at least off the bat, we don't have the plans for players to be able to filter by items that have been transmogrified. So it might be kind of a hard way for players to discover that. But really, we would only disable that ability to use it online on equip if we imagine cases where it would cause problems for us. Like for example, if it costed gold to untransmogrify something, which we actually don't currently plan to do, then it would potentially be a problem if somebody that bought it off the auction house, you know, had a different look than they were expecting, and then they had to go and pay gold to change it back. That would be super annoying. But right now, we're planning to allow you to do it because we aren't aware of any problems with it. But that's possibly a restriction we would put into place if we end up discovering problems.
Thank you very much. That wraps it up. Thank you guys for answering all the questions. Thank you for coming here, asking questions. Just two more reminders at the end. Come by at the Rudolfplatz, where we have a kick-ass 3D street art from Diablo, evolving from the earth, the hell actually. And another thing we would like to remind you on, tomorrow on Thursday at 12 o'clock on our booth in Hall 6.1, B21, we have a welcome event welcoming all the players for the next 3 days. We have Frank on stage, we have signing sessions with all the developers, and orchestra will play some nice tunes from World of Warcraft. Thank you very much, have a nice evening, take care.